Hey, Dr. Jeung, how are you? You're a very busy man right now.
Yeah, tired and still grieving over the shootings, and so it's been a hard week, and I think it'll take a long time to mourn and to support our community at this moment.
Absolutely. So, racism towards Asian Americans is not new, but recently it feels as though more Asian Americans have been speaking up and protesting. Why do you think that is?
I think we're protesting because we have very good reason to be. We created Stop AAPI Hate because we knew the racism would be coming, and it has. We knew that we would be met with violence, and we have been, and we knew that racist policies would be implemented against us, and they have been. So we have every reason to be angry. We have a youth group, campaign, and our youth interviewed 1,000 Asian American youth, and their dominant feeling is anger. We're angry at the system, the failed ideals of America. We're disappointed in our government. We're angry that Black lives don't matter, and we're angry that our families are getting pushed and shoved, especially our elderly. So we have a lot to protest about.
Mm. And you touched on it a little bit on AAPI hate and Stop API hate. Can you tell us a little bit more about the organization and the process of founding that?
We, again, because I teach Asian American studies, I knew from past history that whenever an epidemic arises from Asia, Asians get blamed for it, and then they, again, meet violence and racist policies. So we wanted to be prepared. That happened in SARS when people were pushing and shoving and shunning us. And I saw early on in news stories, and I actually tracked global news stories and domestic news stories, that this type of behavior was increasing. I worked with two community groups, Chinese for Affirmative Action and the Asian Pacific Policy Planning Council, which is in LA, and Chinese for Affirmative Action are in San Francisco. And we began to strategize on how we could track the racism, because unless we documented what was happening, nobody would believe that Asians would face racism. People would say, oh, these are just isolated incidents of a few ignorant people. And so we really wanted to document it. The API Legislative Caucus were really supportive. We went to the Attorney General's office and wrote him a letter asking him, can you start tracking? This is happening. We've already documented in the news accounts. And he said they didn't have the capacity. So we created our own website. And with the help of the API Legislative Caucus, we got a lot of publicity. And on the first day, we got like hundreds of incidents. And I was stunned by, first of all, the volume of incidents. And secondly, the vitriol and the hatred expressed by perpetrators when our respondents talked about what happened to them. People were spewing, slurs at them and profanity, racial epithets, and it was just horrifying. So that continued. Because we're based in the community, because we have multiple language platforms, we continue to get 100 a day, and then from across the country, not just California. So we saw how widespread it was, how it ranged in the type of discrimination, how it popped up in lots of different sites, from schools to public transit to private businesses. And so we just got a lot of data to document the racism and the trends that were happening in real time.
And there was a report in the LA Times that we reported on earlier in the show, released by Stop AAPI Hate last week. You want to give us a little backstory on that report and your findings?
Right. So this week is our 1-year anniversary, and we tabulated our data up through the end of February, and we found nearly 3,800 incidents. Again, they range into 4 main categories. Civil rights violations, where people are mistreated at work, online harassment, microaggressions like verbal harassment and shunning. But again, they're not micro, they're actually pretty macro. People have been racially traumatized. And then the 4th category is assault. Part of the assaults were just physical assaults, where we were pushed and shoved and had bottles and rocks thrown at us, or people actually tried to run us down with their cars. But part of those thoughts was the coughing and spitting at us. And so we saw that happen so much, we created a special category for it. And people are just treating us so subhumanly that they feel like they can cough on another adult. Right? People ask, well, has racism increased since last year? And I go, I don't know. I didn't see anybody coughing or spitting on a fellow human, in 2019. But now it's happening across the nation. And it's just really weird that that people have license to spit on another person. And I think it's pandemic related. I think they think we're the infection and they want to reinfect us.
What would you say to someone who thinks that these recent anti-Asian incidents are just singular acts that don't represent a systemic problem?
Well, you can look at our data. We have 3,800 incidents, and you don't expect limited English people to go and report something. They don't report to the police. They don't report to legal authorities, but we're getting them from non-English speaking people. You don't expect seniors to go and complain and to go online and type in a report, but they are. Disproportionately, our numbers are seniors. So that indicates that we're just getting the tip of the iceberg. And if they're so angry that we have hundreds of seniors complaining, there must be thousands more who aren't reporting, right? Other surveys also confirm our data. They show that the lowest estimate in California was that 7% experienced direct racism. That doesn't sound like much, but that's 400,000 people in California. That's 1,000 incidents of hate every day. So you could say, oh, it's just isolated, but you ask any Asian, now that survey was done last year, early in the pandemic. More recent surveys say 3 out of 5 Asians have experienced it directly. So you could ask any Asian, they're probably 1 degree away from separation from knowing someone who's been harassed or yelled at or shunned or pushed and shoved. So, they could not believe it, but they just could ask every Asian they talk to, and every Asian may have a story.
So what can we do as individuals, both Asian and non-Asian, to address this stigma? And then I'm going to ask as well, what should policymakers do to address anti-Asian racism and violence?
Right. I think I could name 5 things right off the top of my head that individuals can do. The first is, if you're experiencing it or if you see it happening, you should intervene and first make sure that the targeted person is safe. Because again, people are getting attacked physically. And so you want to make sure that person is in a safe place. Don't try to engage with the perpetrator because they want a platform. They want to yell and be angry. And so you just want to remove people or get yourself out of that dangerous situation. You got to set boundaries and say that language is racist. That shoving, that spitting is uncalled for. So you got to intervene. That's the first thing. Secondly, you got to report, because what we want is to have a collective voice, right? If you just sort of complain, people think you're just whining or dismissing. But when you hear so many people experiencing the same thing, that's a lot more powerful. And people realize this is a significant issue, not just for Asian Americans, but this is a significant Californian issue. This is a significant American issue that's reached, crisis proportions. It's not an Asian American issue. It's other people's problem. It's their racism. It's their issue. They got to take care of it, right? So we need to report. And again, you can report even if you're a witness to something. This is what I say to a lot of people is everybody's part of a group, a school, a faith-based organization, a corporation. Get that site to make an official statement denouncing anti-Asian racism. I used to think these little resolutions and statements were just symbolic, but now I think they really matter to counter Trump's racist speech. When he said the term Chinese virus over and over again, it opened up hate. It gave license to hate. And we need to counter that hate by calling people to empathy, by calling people to respect, by calling people to love. It seems really dumb and basic, but we need to do that because right now America is acting really idiotically. America is acting pretty stupidly and spitting and coughing on elderly people. So we need those statements. And the process of gathering the statements and having it come from the top really is a part of the learning process, part of the engagement, talking about the issue process, and it's helpful. I think it helps Asians feel seen and heard. Fourthly, you could shop at Asian businesses. People were shunning us. Racism has led early closures of Asian businesses. We have the second highest joblessness rate in the country. And so a lot of Asian workers got laid off. So if you go back and patronize Chinese restaurants, Vietnamese nail salons, that helps the community. And fifthly, you can donate. You can donate to Asian American groups who are working to fight the racism, to escort seniors, to support COVID-19 vaccinations.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for all of that and for taking your time. I know you're really busy right now. I have one last question, and it is the question that I ask everyone who comes on this show because I am a joy hunter. Where do you find your joy these days?
Well, today I run a lot. And so in Oakland, we have this Redwood Park with the creek was bubbling now. And I just ran along the stream and listened to the creek. And there's deep, deep joy to be found in the woods.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We all need to get out into nature.
Yeah, it's forest bathing. Go forest bathing.
Yes, yes. I love this phrase. Well, thank you, Dr. Jeung, so much for joining us. And, we'll be supporting Stop AAPI Hate however we can. And just massive appreciation and love for what you're doing for the community.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.